Welcome to Booked All Night, the podcast for storytellers and book lovers alike. I'm your host, Jessica Mary, and I'm joined weekly by Leigh and Magdalyn Ann as we geek out over great books and the craft of writing them. This week we're discussing chapters 1 through 10 of The Rise of Issa Igwe by Shanna Miles. So while I have your attention, don't forget to click the link in the show notes to find our Discord server, website, and socials. Alright, my little Libranauts, buckle up, settle in, and let's launch into The Rise of Issa Igwe. Okay.
I always have like a little theme song randomly in my head after you do the intro.
I've been doing it differently for every episode, I might add, even where I cut the theme song. Alright. So this opening line, I do want to focus on because, you know, I love opening lines. And this one is, Issa often wondered if she was a magical mistake. And it's so good for the story that we're about to get into because she's not in control of her powers. And because she's not in control of these powers, everyone around her is in danger, right? She keeps getting possessed by these ghosts. And when they come in, they just immediately take control. And we do get to see that from her point of view in these first couple chapters while she's at the sleepover. And she's just like, please, for the love of God, get out of my body. And they're like, no. And while the ghost that we see here isn't that bad, is just like a great aunt that wants to come in and be like, hey, the money's under the couch kind of thing. We know from Fall of the House of Tatterley that there have been other far less benevolent spirits coming their way for her.
Yeah, there was even later on when there was the field trip and she gets possessed and ends up running into traffic, and it's only her cousin Theo who manages to save her from both A, the ghost, and B, getting run over by a Range Rover. She really has like no protections at all.
It's not that she has no protections, it's that the protections that she has in place just aren't enough, right? So we learn from that field trip story that she's just ixnayed on going on field trips permanently for the rest of her life, right? She's like, and that's why I can't go, because I walked into traffic. And technically she didn't, the ghost in her did, but ultimately her body walked into traffic. And you learn between this, her powers, and everything else, she is so othered from school that she's lonely. You know, the only socialization she's getting in some sense are these ghosts, which is awful.
And not even just on the friend front at school. She gets left behind a lot by her parents when they go on work trips.
Yes.
You know, she always feels abandoned, even though she's, you know, surrounded by her family. It's not the same. It's not her parents, and, you know, she's surrounded by her aunties and you know, her male cousins. She doesn't have any, you know, female friends of her age that really have, you know, stuck with her.
Yeah, she's got no girl peers. And that's sad. And like that picture is very clearly painted as we get into the opening of this book. Like it's very clear. She is lonely. She's probably going to make some friends, hopefully, through the rest of this book. Whether they're dead or alive, we don't know. But she's going to make some friends throughout the rest of this book. And I think, like, this characterization here is very clear, right? Like, Shanna Miles didn't have to sit down and be like, Issa Igwe is lonely. She showed us very clearly. I really love that, right? Because I like to read a lot of middle grade. And middle grade is so weird, right? Because it spans from age 8 up to 13. And so if you're writing like lower middle grade, there is a point where you do have to say like, she was lonely. Like you can show it, but ultimately you're going to have to clarify that because we're still in that age of learning emotion words and like labeling our emotions. And so I really do love that some of this language kind of feels like younger middle grade, even though Issa is like, 13, 14 years old. This is inclusive to part of that younger audience of middle grade.
I think it's implied that she's 8th grade.
Yeah, she's 8th grade, so she's like 13 or 14, depending on birthdays and age limits and stuff of her school district, which obviously are not part of the world building. Could you imagine? They're like, oh, yes, and here in South Carolina, that means that she had to be born between blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah of the year, blah, blah, blah. But you know what I mean? Like, especially the emotions, which we're obviously going to get to talk about this because she goes through a big traumatic event right off the bat.
Jesus, yeah.
But that grief is still there, and a lot of the times when you read middle grade moves through feelings, particularly bad feelings, very fast, where it's like, okay, your parents died in chapter 1, and you're over it by chapter 2, because we have to move on with the story.
Yeah. And speaking of dead parents,
Yes.
the big sudden emotional change for her comes, in chapter 6. I just need to say that prior to that moment, right? I was struggling through the beginning of the book. Probably just because I keep reading it as I'm about to go to sleep, or I'm in bed. I'm horizontal, so I'm already like an 80% chance of falling asleep, right away. But I'm reading, and every chapter is a struggle. I can't keep my eyes open, and I get to chapter 6, and suddenly I am upright and attentive, like I got a bucket of cold water dumped on my head. Just that whole paragraph of her barely being able to register the news that the headmistress gives her, that they found her parents' car wrapped around a tree, just within the borders of the campus, right, as they were leaving.
Yeah.
And this is what, the night of, or her second day.
It's her second day, and so when her parents dropped her off at the witch prison school, right, because the Siren School has a whole history with it, which we can cover in a little bit. But her parents drop her off, and she says to them, "I will never forgive you." And then they drive off, and she goes to bed mad, and she wakes up, she does a whole first day at the Siren School, and at the end of the day, they're like, "Hey, so we found your parents in a car just a little bit still on property." And my thoughts immediately here, because I had the same issues where the first 5 chapters I was like, well, this is some solid world building, but I'm a little bored. This is moving a little slowly for middle grade. It's not that it's bad, but that I have an awful attention span. And this is all information that we need, right? I think we need to see her, we need to see Issa get possessed. We need to see that there have been consequences to this thing being out of her control and out of her family's control and the realm of protection and the things that they have available to her. But, and I have this note here, and I will posit this to you. Do you think her parents dying, or at the very least, her parents dropping her off at school, is a better place to start than where it started?
I was okay with where it started previously. I think we kind of needed that scene of her not getting along with her peers, especially, other girls. And we really kind of needed to know, especially if you hadn't previously read House of Tatterley.
Yeah.
We kind of needed that setup for what her powers are and how it negatively impacts her current situation and how much danger she and others around her are in because of it. But I would have found a way to condense those first 4 chapters into 1 or 2. I think we spend a lot of time prior to getting to the school.
Yeah.
That probably could have been condensed a bit. There was just a lot of repeats of, of this is dangerous, you don't have any control, you can't be going on field trips, and it's a lot of repetition in the beginning, and I think that's part of what factored into the boredness.
Yeah.
But once we kind of get to the school, things start to slowly pick up. It's a new place. It's new to her, so it's new to us. We're kind of learning about more details of the magical world, which is definitely a way to keep people hooked, especially if that's why they picked up this book. It's young witch goes to magic boarding school,
Really creepy magic boarding school, we might
Very
add.
creepy. Yes, incredibly creepy. This is more, I feel, labyrinthian than anything Hogwarts-esque.
Yeah. I wonder if it's... because we're looking at this as a companion novel, so it's not a direct sequel to Theo's story. It's not a jump off of The Fall of the House of Tatterley. It's a companion piece. And so I'm guessing yes, all of that world building needs to happen up front in case this is the first book that you pick up. Because Issa's story is obviously different from Theo's. But the world building that gets done at the beginning is something we didn't get in Tatterly, and it's like about how it feels when a ghost possesses her. There's this really great section. It's a ghost doesn't just appear, it lets you know it's there. The temperature drops and the air becomes thin. If Issa was paying attention, she might notice the hair on the backs of her arms stand up. If she was somewhere quiet, the feeling would be unmistakable. She usually got goosebumps, and it would feel like someone was standing right behind her. And this is while she's at the sleepover, and they've got, music playing, and the girls are laughing, and so she doesn't notice that this bad thing is about to happen. We also get some stuff about the field trips, right? We mentioned that earlier, and the Siren School, which is where most of this book is obviously taking place. And we've got the gossip that the girls who go there rarely return. And if they do, they are, quote, different. And then there's a few texts to her Aunt Sabrina who had gone there. And her Aunt Sabrina says, most important thing, never ever trust the administration ever, which will lead me to my next question. I swear I have a point. And stay away from the night children. So my second question about her parents being dead and the reputation of this school, do you think either the headmistress had something to do with her parents' death or her parents aren't actually dead?
Okay, so I definitely think the administration, especially the assistant headmistress, is incredibly sketchy, right? At one point, she appears out of nowhere to brief the choral instructor, right? Because they all do magic singing songs in one in their shared class. It's like their version of a gen ed, except, singing magic.
Yeah.
And she appears, she has some kind of like hushed conversation with the teacher, and kind of shoots a look at Issa. And then later on, she gives her a quote unquote warding charm bracelet. That's supposed to help protect her from other ghosts. She's given something else at that point, but I'm worried I am confusing the two situations, because she gets a flower from the headmistress after her parents' death.
Yes.
And her roommate Myra is a botanist specialist. Like she's kind of getting very into the botany. She's got like a big old book of herbology, essentially. And she goes, that is a flower that makes you forget things. And she's like, okay, this is going in the garbage immediately. So there's a lot of That's
what I'm saying. I think her parents aren't dead, and the school is just like, forget that you have them. But at the same time, she went home.
Oh, no.
Right? She
went to their funeral. She went home. Her family's in mourning.
Right? Or are they?
I think they are.
I don't trust a single thing. I feel like we're going to come around and the answer is going to be like, it was all a dream caused by the headmistress. Like, I do not trust her that much up front.
Yeah, there's definitely some kind of shenaniganery going on.
Hashtag shenaniganery. But then after the funeral, they're like, okay, well, you can come home. And she's like, no, I want to go back to school. And when I first read that, I was like, I would not want to go back to this school. But having gestated with this plot for a little bit, actually I would, right? Because not only because she plans on studying horology to go back in time to save her parents, but she'd have busy work, right? If she stayed home, she probably wouldn't go back to regular school, which would be further like othering her and pushing her out and really not helping with the trauma. But going back to the new place, there's new things to take her interest, to keep her occupied, and to keep her parents' death out of her head so she can move through it. Except that then we learn that she's not going back for the busy work. She's going back to study time magic, to go back in time and save her parents.
Not only time magic, but also all different sources of being able to reset time or go back and fix things. Like she does zoology because she knows that there are magical creatures that can jump through time. And what was the other one? I think it was like magical artifacts or something, or her the speaking class that she's in, where they learn about, speaking spells. Maybe there was a spell that she can
Yeah.
use in that situation.
I loved this part of her characterization because there's so much to say about it here, right? So she believes that magic is going to give her some godlike control over this awful situation. She believes it's going to be easy, right? No part of her up front is like, oh, wow, time magic, that sounds like that's going to take some years to study. She's like, I'll go to one class and obviously be able to travel back in time and save my parents. And she also believes in her own magical abilities, that she will be able to learn how to reverse time. There's not a part like, with her own innate ability, she's like, I can't keep these ghosts out and it's driving me insane. But as it comes to the determination she has to save her parents, she's like, yes, I will absolutely be able to do that. And she's very disappointed when she goes to the first day of class in horology, after she, horology, yes. After she goes through and changes her whole schedule and she has this first class in horology, she's very upset to learn that nobody can go back further than like 5 seconds, right? So there's like a girl that's like breaking stuff and repairing it and breaking it and repairing it. There's another girl that's like doing her eyeliner and being like, no, I don't like that, and sending it back 5 seconds to take it off her face. And she's like, what are you people doing? And she's immediately very judgmental of them. And I loved it. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. If my goal was to save my parents from whatever horrific death they have ensued, and my goal was like, hey, I'm gonna save you with time magic, and I learned that the only way that we're learning about time magic is to, like, do very basic little removal things in a very controlled space, I'd be upset too.
Yeah. What I really actually kind of enjoyed, kind of a tangent off of the timekeeping and the time jumping kind of situation, but we actually get to see another side of Issa's powers that previously we haven't like had any idea about, and that was her sort of mind melding with animals on occasion. So she says, she has occasionally she's had a couple of animals in her head. Like one time she almost jumped off a roof because she was connected to a sparrow, and if it wasn't for her dad catching her ankle, she would have jumped. Situations like that. And she goes to see the zoolog professor, Master Gonzalez, who they're riding a bunch of horses. They're taking care of them. They use the horses to go on like patrols around the perimeter of the campus. And he kind of and she wants to join because she knows there's magical creatures that can jump in time. So she joins in, and the professor is like, okay, if you can convince this finicky horse to make a jump that no one in all of my time here has been able to do, I will give you the recipe for a magical charm that allows you teleport yourself once to any location, like this big thing. And he's never given it out. And throughout the course of that scene, she's talking to the horse, she's trying to connect to it, and she struggles, but then she kind of has this moment where like she opens herself up, and she and the horse kind of mind meld, and she doesn't narrate it as the horse jumped, but she jumped. She's the one that makes the jump, right? So she's kind of embodying these animals in a way that almost feels kind of like she's the Ghost Rider rather than the one getting possessed.
But that's an important thing to bring up with the Ghost Riders there as well, because she says when they come and when they go, they leave little bits of themselves behind. And so I wonder if this innate ability to talk to animals is something from her, or if it's residue from being possessed by these animal spirits, or from another Ghost Rider that had come through. And was like, hey, I know how to do this. And it just kind of stayed with her.
I mean, that's possible. I don't know if she's ever been possessed by anything that wasn't previously non-magical. I don't remember if she got possessed by the hag in the House of Tatterley, but I think she's, as far as I remember, she's only ever been possessed by humans. Not witches, not anything else, but mostly humans. Great Aunt Ethel saying there's $1,000 under the couch cushions. Here's the access to my stocks account that'll set the family up for forever. Or
money in the mattress.
the little previous slave boy who called, her teacher bad names in French and caused her to run out into the street.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I think it's an innate her thing, because there's a lot of moments where she's sort of not like praised, but a lot of adults in her life say her gift is exactly that. It's a gift. It's a strong gift. It's rare. She's one of very few conduits currently alive. She's sort of touted as something special, and before a lot of this is she's doubting herself. She's putting herself down because she's a danger to herself and others. She doesn't have the control when she's possessed. She's sort of in the back seat begging these ghosts to leave her alone, and they ignore her. With the reveal of the sort of animal mind meld situation, and kind of getting to see that she's got more than just like the charms that her aunties have taught her, like the usage of the bells in the horology class, and just her easy ability to sort of take it in quickly and be able to sort of do it very fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of foretelling of her becoming something more. Of her, there's some latent power in her that she doesn't know, so we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely going to come up.
Yeah, I think it also speaks to the determination she has as a character, right? Because as you're saying, like, there's that moment she opens herself up to the horse. And it may not be something that in this particular scene she intended to do, but is something that she wanted to do. She wanted to make that connection, and so she was like, well, however my body's going to do it, just go and do it, because I need to do this. I hope that comes up to play. I hope that these things that we have gotten laid down in these first couple of chapters do come up in that traditional echo of children's literature, because I always love to see how things were made important to the story.
I feel like she hasn't realized herself what this sort of means for her. I don't think she's really kind of accepted A, the fact that she can do this, and B, that there is something more to her power than just being used as a voice box for ghosts. And I think her acceptance of that, her understanding that there's more to her power than what she initially thought, I think that's going to be a really satisfying moment.
Yeah. I think it's going to be satisfying, one, in this like expansion that she clearly has going for her, but also in a sort of mastery that I think is also coming to her. I think a moment where she like pushes something out is going to be a very powerful scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So after all of this, Issa decides to go and sneak out, and she goes to investigate the scene where her parents' car crashed around the tree. And this, I think, was a really good scene too. She walks down there, she finds it, she's like, this is where they were. The skid marks are still on the road, there's still damages to the tree. And she like kicks the tree. She's like, I bet you know what happened. And she like, screw you, tree. And I think that's great that she's like, this is the only thing I have to displace my anger at the situation into, because whose fault is it really? But I also think there's some little things in that scene where it's like, okay, her parents' car veered off the road, but like, why? There's nothing there that says why.
There was an important thing that she noted too when she was investigating the tree, was that the tree was not right next to the road. Like, her parents had to have driven through the woods a little bit first before they hit the tree, which is incredibly suspicious.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there's these little things that she didn't necessarily like super focus on, but they are definitely like, hey,
This is definitely Shanna Miles being like waving a little flag in our faces, like, hey, pay attention. Pay attention to this. Make a note of this.
But yeah, I love that. And then after she kicks this tree, it opens up and there's a creepy ghost child zombie boy thing inside.
Yeah, she bleeds on the tree first. She cuts open her palm on the tree because she's hitting it so hard. And then she says it like lightning like cracks it open, and like there's a hollow, but it's not empty inside, and it was spooky.
It was so spooky.
Then she finds the body of a boy, and she's not sure if he's dead or alive, and he just looks like, like he's been sleeping there for 200 years, and he opens his eyes, looks at her, and she panics. She's just, bye.
That was my favorite part of that chapter. It was like, its eyes opened, and she was like, hey, peace, gotta bounce, goodbye, absolutely not, I'm going. And I feel like that's, most of the ghosts that she encounters, they just kind of come into her. But this one is, I don't even know that it's a ghost yet, right? It's corporeal, and whatever it is, it's there. She
sees that his chest, but it's tangible. She sees that its chest is rising and falling shortly before he opened his eyes. So it's not a ghost, and he's definitely something. I feel like I don't know exactly what, because I don't think we have enough knowledge about the world building and the extent of the creatures that might inhabit this place. But he is for sure something weird.
Yeah. And then, literally like an hour after that, there's a note in the dorms from the headmistress. She's like, so we know that somebody snuck out. Lisa's just like, yeah, who could have done that? I don't know. Wow, the floor is very interesting.
Wow, yeah. Oh, look at that. Have you ever noticed that mold stain over there? Yeah, that's weird.
So good. I have like this headcanon scene where like she's just like looking anywhere else, and like that creepy little boy shows up in the window, and she just like pulls a blind down, like, what? Whew. That moon is awful bright, like I just gotta keep it out.
Meanwhile, Myra, her roommate, is just kind of looking at her and then just kind of muttering, plausible deniability, plausible deniability, plausible deniability.
Oh my god, that part was great. She's like, I have to go do a thing. I don't want to know. What? Nope, I don't want to know because someone's going to ask me, and I don't like lying, so I just don't want to know. Well, you see, I have to go to again, plausible deniability. I don't want to know. I love that. I thought that was really cute, where, like, a really good, like, friendship building scene where the friend is like, well, I'm not going to tell you no because I'm not your mother, but also, la 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 la, I can't hear you, la 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 la. I thought that was good. Overall, with the exception of, like, the first couple of chapters, which I did feel I'm mixed about because it was, like, very important information if this is the first book that you're picking up, but also moved really slow for me. Mm-hmm. And, like, obviously, I'm an adult reader of children's fiction. Slow for me is different than slow for a child, but in my defense, I have the attention span of a goldfish. Actually, I think goldfish might have a longer attention span than me these days. So, like, take my opinion on it being slow with a grain of salt. But I feel like Tatterley opened up better.
It did. It definitely caught my attention faster. And if I hadn't previously read House of Tatterley, I probably would not have continued with Rise of Issa Igwe if I didn't have to. Like, if I had just picked this up on my own volition, like, I probably would have read the first couple of chapters, been like, yeah, I'm not into this. This one's clearly not for me, and then just DNF'd it. But I did really like where she's talking to, I forget exactly who it was. I wasn't able to bookmark the page or anything, but where she's talking to someone who's asking her about what it feels like to get possessed. Or they're asking questions about her power, right? And at one point, she just very casually drops the entire plot of the fall of the House of Tatterley in, like, 2 sentences. Where, look, oh, yeah, there was a hag once who, sucked out the souls out of children, and they were actually drowning. And that was just...
Right, and that character...
I really...
Yeah,
I
that
really
character
like
is just sitting there like, okay, thank you for letting me know. It's... malicious compliance on her part, right? Somebody is like, hey, what's that feel like? And she's like, ice cold pudding. Like the most disgusting possible description of what it feels like. And they're like, oh, okay. And everyone around her thinks that she's special, right? Because she's one of like 2 or 3 living conduits, not just in her family, but period. And she's like, this is a curse. I am cursed. This is awful. This is truly not something to aspire to. And everyone around her is like, wow, that's such a special power, and it's going to be so powerful. And she's like, do you hear yourself talking? Like, you have no idea what you're talking about.
I did like there were instances where, like, at the choral class where, everyone's asked to come up to the front, they're supposed to sing something to keep a feather afloat, right? And she goes up and she gets possessed by, like, an opera singer or something, I don't remember, and who sings through her. And when she finally comes out of that, when the ghost is forced out of her, the kids in the class, for the first time in her life, are not freaked out or weirded out by it. Most of them are in awe. And I think that was the first time that she had ever seen something like that. And then there was later on where she meets someone at the front of right about when she goes to her first horology class. She meets a classmate, and they're like, oh yeah, no, in my hometown you would be welcome like a guest of honor because of your power. And she feels really happy about that for the first time. Like that feels like a turning point for her, going from seeing her power as a curse to seeing it more properly as a gift and as how other people might see it.
There were also, in that scene where she gets possessed during choral class, the teacher looks at her and she's like, Issa, is that you? And inside, Issa's like, no, it's not. And the ghost is like, excuse me, that is not my name. And they're like, awesome, boom, get out, But the scenes where, like, you're right, she comes out and they're all in awe, and she meets that other person in the horology class, really shows how weird it is that she wasn't put in a school or like a club or homeschooled with other Wiccan children and other magical children.
Was, I think, kind of. I mean, like, they mentioned going to the night market where they occasionally have, like, little group classes, but it's nothing formal. I don't think it was just sort of like fun little information sessions between someone who was really good at charms, teaching you how to make a charm or something, and it wasn't like a proper magical education.
It's basically like a little arts and crafts session, and it made me wonder why her parents waited so long to put her into a magical education, especially when her powers have been putting her in very precarious situations. At the very least, it was surprising that they didn't put her in there after she walked into traffic or tried to jump off of the top of the house.
I wonder how much of that was hesitancy coming from her aunt Sabrina, who had been a previous student at the Siren School, sort of urging them away from that decision, and how much of it, because it kind of feels like it was initially as a punishment, because that's sort of what she thinks. Like, she gets in trouble at school, she comes home, and her parents are like, well, we're not gonna punish you. You're not gonna go to this school anymore. And she's really hopeful. She's like, oh, can I get homeschooled? Can I travel with you? And they're like, no, we're sending you to Siren School. And she's like, oh no, this is a punishment.
The other thing that's weird with the other schools, right? Because her roommate has come from other magical schools, is that it sounds like all of these magical schools are awful.
Yeah, they're really shady.
Yeah.
Like, Myra at one point mentions that
they used, like, undead to watch them in the halls and stuff.
They put charms on them for them to, force them to work. Like, incredibly unethical teaching methods over here. And, so far, as far as we know so far, the only horrible and sort of not good thing about the schools that we've canonically learned so far is that it used to be a plantation. That's that's not great.
Yeah, they have the statue, right, of all of the slaves, and it's like, hey,
are we sure this is okay for me, a black girl, to be going to?
Yeah, she's got that conversation with her parents, right, because they're at the weird school tour, and the headmistress is like, we're devoted to diversity, and she's like, slave statue?
And, like, her dad becomes visibly upset when he spots the statue too. He's like shaking in the pew while they're listening to the headmistress talk about, diversity and inclusion and
Yeah,
all
and then
that.
she's like, "This is my shot."
And she's like, "Oh, maybe I can make it. Yeah, maybe I can make it more irritated." And
Yeah, and he's basically like, "Knock it off! You're staying here." And it's like, what is wrong with you?
oh yeah, he ends up vibing with like one of the astronomy professors or something, and they get into a big nerdy discussion. He's like, "No, I love this place. You're staying."
Yeah, it was all very weird. And like now that we're getting to see some of the administration, right? So like so far the urology professor has been okay, and the zoology professor has been okay, but the headmistress and the assistant, it's like, I don't trust you. And not just because Aunt Sabrina told us not to trust you, but you're like mad sketch. That's how sketchy you are. I'm talking like I'm 20 years younger.
Weirdly enough, it's the only two male professors that we've met so far on a primarily female campus in both student body and faculty that are the ones that are slightly more trustworthy. And part of me is wondering if that's a red herring. Because Issa mentions when she meets Master Gonzalez, the zoology professor, saying he's one of very few warlocks on campus. So we already know going in, there's maybe a handful of men. So she only really meets the headmistress and the assistant headmistress, who are extra sketch, and she also doesn't trust them. Like she views everything that they do for her as with a grain of salt because of her Aunt Sabrina's warnings, but also because they keep trying to give her flowers that will make her forget stuff and calm her down and forget her parents and her grief.
I feel like we're going to see some stuff that is going to be like memory altering magic. We're going to see her succumb to those flowers, I think, in a moment of frustration or grief where she's like, well, obviously I'm never going to be able to do what I need to do, so I'm just going to hold on to this flower. Or she's going to learn...
Or it gets slipped to her unknowingly.
Yeah, or exactly.
She's in the office with the headmistress after she comes back post-funeral. The headmistress served her tea, and she picks up the tea and makes a point of pretending to look like she's drinking it because it, quote unquote, seems the polite thing to do. But that also kind of feels like it was a setup for us to be like, did she spike the tea?
It simply wouldn't be children's lit if we weren't taught to mistrust adults, right? So I'm eager to see what the adults come to play into, right? Like a symptom of children's literature is that you have to remove the adults in order to give your child protagonist autonomy, and a lot of ways to do that is to kill them, as we have done here, or they're on vacation, as her parents were before. Oh, we've done 2 of those. And other ways is that they're just completely, like, negligible, right? Like, Goosebumps has a lot of this. One of my favorite examples is one of the there's a monster in the basement stories, and the kid comes up and he's like, Mom, there's a body in the basement. And she's basically like, shut up, Harold, I'm doing the dishes. Like, those are the parents that happen in children's literature, because if you had parents that were actually attentive to their kids in children's literature, they would come in and solve the problem. And so a lot of secrets have to be kept. And I'm eager to see how her new autonomy plays out, because she does finally have some independence on this campus where she did not at home. And I want to see what happens and what she finds out when she sneaks out. I want to see her powers grow, and I want to see her try and fail at things that she would not have been able to do at home. Because she's like more susceptible at home, I think, because she's not around people that are magical all the time. And now she is, and they're all very suspicious whenever she's like, you can sing in French? Oh, it's not you. Okay. Well, we'll just banish that out of you. So I'm eager to read on.
I really like that scene in the choral class where, she goes up and the teacher's like, okay, so what are you going to sing for us, Issa? She goes, I'm going to sing a song by Chaka Khan. And then she busts out in Italian opera.
Yeah. El Torador by Chaka Khan.
I really want to talk about the Night Children a little bit more.
Okay, yeah, so those are creepy.
Yes, we get introduced to them. Well, other than the Aunt Shannon being
Sabrina.
like, stay away from the Night Children.
Shannon wrote it. Sabrina is the aunt.
Sorry. Aunt Sabrina is like, stay away from the Night Children, all creepy like and vague, as is her wont to do.
Yes.
But she comes into horology. She meets a girl who's like, oh, come sit with me and Helga. And she finds out Helga is Helga Proctor, daughter or aunt's, descendant of Goody Proctor of Salem. And we kind of get that whole, oh, there's power in family names and all that.
And lineage, yeah.
And lineage and all that. And she kind of makes the mention that, oh, she probably touts her name Proctor to prove she's superior or something. And Helga kind of gives off real icy kind of vibes. But she mentions, like, when Issa questions, what are the Night Children? Helga kind of goes, oh, they're child demons, cursed to roam the property for all eternity. It's a bitter magic curse, but what makes it especially bad is that the curse is on the land before the children die, so they don't have to do the spell but once. And any kid who dies after that on the property becomes afflicted.
Yeah, because Issa's, like, real confused about that. She's like, how can you put a curse on someone that you don't know, that hasn't been born yet? And so, like, the creation of these Night Children is especially creepy because of that. Because it's like, wow, okay. Like, this is generations worth of creepy.
Yeah, like someone goes, oh yeah, no, my great-grandmother said that a girl caught the Spanish flu when she was here and died. And the very next semester she was seen roaming the grounds. It's both a stake that we get that, if something happens to Issa along the way, she could be, fated to become one of these Night Children. And it makes me think, is the boy in the tree some kind of night child,
Ooh,
because
yeah.
it's kind of hinted that he's like probably as old as the tree, which is like over 200 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's young. He's like Issa's age, and he's sort of, I don't know, I feel like he could be something related to the Night Children, but it feels super creepy, and it almost feels like this curse was put for a very specific reason, and the school is sort of like a farm of children being prepared for slaughter to be turned into more Night Children.
Yeah, I especially feel that way because the school used to be a plantation. And so I feel like we're going to find out, like, part of the curse is it's going to be rooted in that history, in that it was like, okay, well, you can die, but you're coming right back to work for eternity. And it's going to be extra weird and extra creepy, and I'm going to scream in the middle of the night going, ha-ha, if I was right, as I tend to do. That's a wrap on this episode of Booked All Night. Click that follow button and subscribe to the show. Share this episode everywhere you can, and don't forget to drop a review. We're a small corner of the internet, and every little bit helps. Visit the link in the show notes to see our other reviews, find us on Instagram and TikTok, and join our Discord community where we'll be running all of our giveaways, posting excerpts, and streaming our interviews live. Join today, invite your friends and fellow readers, and help us hit our first goal of 100 members. When we hit 100 members, we'll run our first giveaway. Booked All Night is produced by Rob Cook. Whenever you share an episode, be sure to tag us at Booked All Night Pod and say hi to our guy in the sound booth. Join us next week as we launch into chapters 11 through 20 of Shanna Miles' The Rise of Issa Igwe. Until next time, my little Libranauts, this is Jessica Mary and Magdalyn Ann signing off and reminding you all to stay booked all night.